But let's begin with a little college basketball news. In this new world of the NILs, this is the first time we're seeing a lawsuit of this magnitude. 6 former players that played at Florida State University filed a lawsuit on Monday against Leonard Hamilton. He is the FSU head coach over unpaid promises of NIL compensation that total $1.5 million, and also acknowledged that they boycotted a practice last season over the missed payments. The legal complaint was filed in Leon County, which is in Tallahassee. 6 plaintiffs are players on the team: Darren Green, Josh Nickelberry, Primo Spears, Cameron Fletcher, Deontay Green, and Jalen Worley. They say that each of them was due $250,000, and essentially they never got it. We'll see what happens in the future with this story. Meanwhile, the story of the NFL season has been the rookie quarterbacks, and yet another win for Jaden Daniels as the Commanders beat the Falcons in overtime last night. Daniels threw a touchdown in overtime and also threw one at the end of the game. In fact, he's done this 5 different times this season, throwing a touchdown in the fourth quarter or overtime. 30-24 is the win, and Washington is in the playoffs. The Falcons now going to need some help in order to qualify for the playoffs, which would include Tampa Bay losing next week. But the star of the show, once again, was Daniels, who's closing in on his first playoff appearance.
My emotion, I'm tired right now, but I'm excited. I'm happy. The fan base waited a long time for this. I really can't put into words, how much it means to them and how much it means to me. Be able to go out there and lead this franchise and this team to opportunities like that.
You obviously had some success in the 2-minute drill. The overtime was a little bit different. What was that like, just before the overtime? What's going through your mind, and what was it like in that drive?
God blessed me again, gave me another opportunity to go out there and try to win a football game, just like you did last week. It's a lot of ups and downs and adversity in this game that you go through and you go through in life. So you never waver. You stand tall, stand 10 feet down, and, go out there and try to execute the moment.
Still a couple of weeks away from Daniels' first playoff appearance. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Vikings, it could be a few weeks away, depending on how things work out for them next week. But let's recap last night as they beat the Green Bay Packers. Ended up being a closer game than what we thought, 27-25. In fact, Minnesota led this game by 2 touchdowns late, but Green Bay, as they have done several times this season, had a furious comeback to make the game closer. Another huge game, in fact, a career game for quarterback Sam Darnold in terms of passing yards. What a season he has had on his way to potentially the NFC North title. In fact, the Vikings will play the Detroit Lions next Sunday night for that title. Here's Kevin O'Connell on winning games at home this season.
And very proud of our guys. And it was so important to us this year to get back to the way we should play at US Bank Stadium. So to finish 7-1 in front of our fans and have that kind of atmosphere in a game like this is why we do what we do, and love the support of our fans. Thought it was phenomenal tonight, as always. It was huge for us, and our team thrives off of it. So now we get to go on the road and have a chance to compete one more time. That's all we ask for, is just another new week, new challenge. Really, really one of the best teams in football all year long. We got to go to their place and roll it out there for 60 minutes. So we're going to put our work in this week and try to find a way to go 1-0 this week.
Meanwhile, the Packers will not be winning the North, but they will be in the NFC postseason. But maybe the Packers would like to start off a game by not being down 2 touchdowns. In fact, that's kind of doomed them at different points this season, according to their head coach, Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, it obviously bothers me. I just think that you can't get down against good football teams. And if there's a lesson there, that is the lesson, because it's tough to come back. I think our guys continue to fight and battle and scratch and claw, but ultimately we just can't put ourselves in a hole like that. And it certainly took us way too long to get going offensively. And if that happens, then, this is the result.
Packers will be headed toward the playoffs. We'll see where they're headed next week. Meanwhile, the New York Giants were headed directly toward a collision with the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Folks, they gave it away yesterday. There is no tanking in the NFL, clearly. 45-33, they beat the Indianapolis Colts. Colts have now been eliminated from the playoffs, and the Giants may not get the number 1 overall pick in the draft as a result. Meanwhile, will Brian Dable, their head coach, even be around for it? He's not even sure.
Do you think today was evidence that if you get consistent good quarterback play, that you as the coach are the right person to keep leading this team?
Yeah, I mean, I understand the question. I'm just happy for the players and the coaches right now to get a win, and I'm happy with Drew, how he played. I'm proud of him. Wasn't great last week. I was on him pretty good, but he's a mentally tough guy, and had a good week. And again, now we got to do it all over next week.
The New York Jets are in a similar position to the New York Giants, although the Giants will have a better pick than them. Jets lost again to the Buffalo Bills. Final was 40-14 on Sunday. And also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took out the Panthers 48-14. They win next week. They capture the NFC South. The Miami Dolphins are still alive in the playoff hunt. Ugly game yesterday. Cleveland couldn't get anything going offensively. Miami wins by a final of 20-3. Meanwhile, Saquon Barkley is taking aim at the all-time rushing record. He's got a shot. He ran for 167 yards yesterday as the Eagles rolled the Cowboys 41-7. Barkley is now over 2,000 yards for the season.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Just being a fan of the game and the running back position, to reach a milestone and put myself up there with 8 other backs that I respect, and some of them I grew up watching, definitely means a lot. But at the same time, I wouldn't be able to do that with this team. And like I said, you can't be great without the greatness of others, and I'm just happy I was able to be a part of the team and be able to reach a milestone like that.
Want a shot at the record?
The way I look at it, if it's in God's plan, then it is. If I'm not overly trying to go get it. I'm not scared of it. Like I would love to, but at the end of the day, also we got bigger things that we're focusing on, and we're able to clinch the division right here. And whether it's we play next week or not and rest, I'm fine with that too, because I didn't come here and sign here just to rush for 2,000 or break a record. I want to do something special, and meaning special with the team.
Eagles will have that chance. The Raiders are ending their season, it looks like, on a high note. They beat the Saints on the road 25-10, and the Jaguars beat the Titans 20-13. Jacksonville right now has the number 2 overall pick in the draft. Meanwhile, the Bengals stay alive. They beat the Broncos 30-24. Great game on Saturday, by the way. Also, the Rams beat the Cardinals 13-9. They clinched the NFC West. The Chargers clinch a playoff spot. They beat New England 40-7. And San Francisco is playing on Monday Night Football tonight. The Lions are 3.5-point favorites. At the Pop-Tarts Bowl, Cam Ward had a great first half. Didn't play in the second half. Miami lost the bowl game 42-41. That was a hot topic this weekend. BYU beats Colorado in the Alamo Bowl, and that final was 36-14. Nebraska wins the Pinstripe Bowl 20-15, and UConn takes care of North Carolina by a final of 27-14. One bowl game today. It is the Music City Bowl, 2:30 Eastern. We got Iowa taking on Missouri. Missouri's 2.5-point favorites, and the total is 40.5. Also over the weekend, Corbin Burns agreed to a new contract, $210 million over 6 years with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Teoscar Hernandez is back with the Dodgers. Josh Bell back with Washington. Pat Evans is back with us from Legal Sports Report. It's time to recap the year in news and sports betting in 2024. You can also read all of Pat's columns over at LegalSportsReport.com. Pat, great to have you back here on Newswire. I mean, we did have, I would say, a plethora of stories to talk about, as we always do throughout the year. I guess maybe the unfortunate part was not more states being legal. I think that's probably a good place to start, but you never know. 2025 is around the corner. Maybe some new states jump in the fray.
I mean, yeah, as we've talked about throughout our time as a show, the states that were going to get it done early got it done. And since then, like you said, this year was very dry in terms of legislation action. Of course, Missouri ended up getting passed through on the ballot. So that was good for Missouri and I guess the industry as a whole. But the last couple of years have been really slow, to your point. The states, the low-hanging fruit's gone. Now we're reaching up into the higher branches. And all these states that we're going to talk about here in a minute are just kind of been slowly chugging towards legalization eventually. I think a lot of states, there's a few, like Utah, that will probably never, or, in 2100 or 2100 and whatever you want to call it. But, the states that we're looking at really closely this year will be Minnesota. I mean, that's one that the last 3 years has come very close to passage. The legislative makeup in that state is why we're kind of in this limbo area. Earlier this year, we had the quote unquote, finish line deal that just barely couldn't get passed, which I've been told was, kind of exaggerated. And it changes a little bit now because last year the Democrats controlled both chambers and the governor's mansion. And they want, of course, tribal exclusivity for sports betting, which the tribes are a very powerful Democratic force and, have a lot of say up there. The Republicans want the horse racing tracks involved. Now the Republicans control the Senate or the House, and the Democrats control the Senate. So now there's this kind of split kind of chamber. So is it going to be this deal that almost got done this year again to roll into it, or are we going to see just new power dynamics shift everything up there? So that's going to be really interesting to watch. I don't even know where to peg it right now. I mean, we've seen a couple bills filed. Everybody says they're willing to talk and compromise, but when push comes to shove in politics, that's a big leap. Down in Georgia, another one of these states that we're very close on the last couple of years. Last year, the Senate kind of took the reins and said, hey, this is what we're doing. There was a good bipartisan push, but then a couple senators came in and said, whoa, we want a constitutional amendment. You can't just put it under the lottery. That made a couple senators drop off because that requires even more votes. And then it also requires a ballot initiative to get it over the edge. And so then this year now, we've seen senators saying this has to start in the House before we consider it. But if they get it through, then we'll take it up. So Georgia has been a political mess, as we know. I don't know if it's a mess is the right word, but it's a political battleground. I mean, you just look at 2020 in the presidential election, and then this year, which again, this year it went from Biden in 2020 to Trump in 2024. And we've seen a sports betting sponsor come out with an op-ed who said, hey, the voters who swung this state back to Trump, they are big time sports betting demographics. We need to get this done because clearly the voters in our state want it. So those are the two states I think we're looking at closest to probably get something done. We haven't seen a bill filed yet in Mississippi to go online. They, of course, have in-person sports betting. The last couple of years, they've had bills filed to, allow it to go statewide mobile. We haven't seen that filed yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. And it's always a good, chance there because they already have sports betting. So that would be a big expansion, though, down there.
You think Texas is one of those states that we could see some activity this year?
There will be lots of activity in Texas. This is the state that the entire industry has their eyes on. It, of course, is a giant market, loves their sports, lots of professional sports teams, lots of big names pushing for it, including Mark Humid, Tillman Fertitta. The Sands Corp is now involved in there. Jerry Jones wants it. The problem is, you have a big name in Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick who does not want gambling expansion. So that is the big hurdle in the way. We know that Mary Adelson is lobbying a lot of money this year into the political framework down there, including Dan Patrick, hoping to kind of swing votes. Will that happen? Who knows? I mean, a lot of people are putting it because they meet every other year to 2027 once Dan Patrick is termed out, which that's a long time in the world, but it is a huge market, and the industry will not stop working on this down there because it is, we've had estimates come out saying it would be the largest handle market, which of course would also generate lots of revenue. So the industry really wants it. We know there's been a couple bills filed already. I'm sure there will be even more. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 2023. It did pass, a sports betting bill did pass the House. So you could almost think that it will do that again, unless they just see the Senate as an immovable object and they don't even want to put effort into it. But you'd like to see something happen there. And if it does get in the Senate, maybe there is a groundswell movement there that kind of maybe puts pressure on Patrick. Again, will be seen, but this is a state that, to your point, will have lots of activity, lots of eyeballs on it, and something we're going to talk about a lot in 2025.
All right, let's close it out with West Virginia, new operator of the VIP kind here. Pat, tell us more.
Yeah, this was a really interesting story. I think, we talk a lot about kind of the industry and what's happening in terms of operators. Of course, FanDuel and DraftKings are the major players. You've got your second tier of, BetMGM, Caesars, Fanatics, ESPN, Bet, what have you, Bet365, and then kind of these kind of more niche operators. VIP Play is a new one, quote unquote, but it is actually active in Tennessee right now as 24/7 Sports, which is, of course, just an online-only market. So it's just a little online sports book. The company is coming out, rebranding. They've got a new partnership with a provider to create a new, and they promise, better app, including online casino, which is why they're entering into West Virginia, which, of course, is one of the few states with online casino. Again, we'll see what happens. These niche, I think when you're looking at the market of sportsbook operators, at some point you're going to find these operators that are going for smaller markets and just making their little piece. And I think that's probably what Play is doing. They did say this is the beginning of a North American expansion, so I would expect a couple other states to launch, or maybe even Canada. Who knows? I guess they're in full plans. But yeah, it's kind of like, last week we talked about Kentucky getting Prime Sports, a smaller sports book focused on sharp bettors that can get lots of bets down without worrying about a limit. Very similar to Circa, which is also kind of slowly rolling out and expanding their footprint. And those are the operators, I think, that they're not too concerned about taking a massive amount of handle like the FanDuels and the DraftKings, and they're just going in and getting what revenue they can and thinking, okay, we'll make what we can, and we're not too worried about being the major player. See what happens, over the next couple of years in terms of that second tier of operators that, some of them are struggling in markets to gain a market share that might be worthwhile to them for how much, marketing spend they're doing or how much their overhead is. So, yeah, VIP Play. Certainly keep an eye out on them in your state if you do have a legal market, and they might be coming to you soon.
It could, Pat. So what are the big New Year's Eve plans for Pat Evans and the Evans family this year? Let's leave with that as your final show with us here this year.
Yeah, that's true. I think going out to dinner and probably fairly early and just coming back and watching New Year's Eve programming and probably some football, I would imagine. So really, really calm, maybe some champagne. How about you, Craig?
Maybe some champagne. At this rate, it's going to be a nothing for me based on the way things are going right now. But anyway, thanks again for coming. Story for a different day. Thanks again, Pat, for coming on Newswire. Really appreciate it. Have a great new year, and see you again in 2025.
Yeah, I'll see you next year, Craig.